down go the potential finals favorites. Plus, the investigation to find they continues. Amber loses friends just as quickly as she got them. Shane starts to stir. Frank does a lot of pacing and yelling. Veronica asserts her dominance. And Nany and Turbo give a quick reminder that they may be the team to beat this whole dang time. It's the Challenge All-Stars Rivals Episode 7 recap coming up right now. What up, my fellow Challenge lovers? Welcome to The Challenge Historian, where we dive deep into all things MTV's The Challenge. I am your host and dedicated Challenge Historian, Jacob Hullaball. Thank you so very much for being here with me a little later than usual on this Thursday morning. A little wrapped up, a little under the weather, a little combo of everything last night after this thrilling, wonderful, amazing episode of All-Stars Rivals. So we're coming to you the next morning. We've digested it a little bit more. We've reviewed the notes. We've checked. And I wasn't able to actually listen into Frank or anyone else's lives last night. So if I missed some vital info from those, as always, you can comment below if you're on the YouTube side or the Spotify side now, or you can send me some DMs, or hopefully word gets around anything from those lives that is super pertinent and important to our understanding of what is happening here on our screens. But it's a great episode, a lot to get to. The only programming reminders before we dive in is that earlier this week on Monday, I did a fantasy cast of All-Stars Real World versus Road Rules. I made the pitch for why that should be the format. Two teams, Real World versus Road Rules, the old school, the true OG format of the show that the show was built on. Why that should be, I just basically made most of the pitch, but that should be the next season of All-Stars. We should do it. And then I did not one, not two, not three, but 4 different versions of a fantasy cast, all of which extremely realistic, could absolutely be done. I did at the very end, for those who only listened to a little bit and then are like, where was Coral? Where was this person? Where was that person? I made them all realistic. And at the end, I gave a bunch of other names that, could have been in my fantasy casting. And then at the very end, I gave the list of folks like a Coral or a Landon or a Miz or a Theo Vaughn or someone like that. That is the dream people that it's not going to happen. Probably, almost certainly not going to happen. So they are mentioned. You got to listen to the whole thing, though. So that's out there and available for you. And I anticipated at the end of this week on Friday, tomorrow now, there being another video for you that is going to be postponed until sometime next week, either Monday or Friday. I like to keep it spaced out a little bit from the All-Stars recaps, and so we'll see if that's Monday or Friday, but we are going to begin a very, very important series ranking certain things about the challenge, and it's too important to just throw together and get out there. A lot of work's got to go into it, a lot of thoughts got to go into it, so we need a little bit more time. That will be out next week, though, so you will get 2 episodes, videos, whatever, however you consume it next week as well. For now, All-Stars Rivals, I almost said All-Stars 7. We're only on All-Stars 5. All-Stars Rivals, episode 7. A lot to get to. Let's dive in. Opening house segment. This will be super quick because it was a very quick segment, and there isn't a ton to discuss that won't come up in some way, shape, or form the rest of the episode. But I will say we'll talk more about it later when she has the big confrontation with Frank at the nominations. But Amber, at the start of the episode, is the only one. We get the whole montage of who's they. Everyone thinks it's a different person. Everyone thinks a different person is out to get them. The whole house is confused. Well done, Veronica. Well done, Katie. Well done, Frank. Okay? Amazing job. We covered it last week. Everyone is still confused. Amber, yes, she has a little extra info from Corey, who confirms to her what I told you was true. What just happened was because everything I told you was true on his way out. But she is the only one. She begins the episode as she's the only one who has figured this out. She is like, Veronica was at, the helm of this, but I think Frank was the one pushing Veronica, or that started Veronica on the path that led to Ashley Dario going in and everything that happening. And she's exactly correct. She's the only one that is exactly correct. Again, last week we joked about how Frank went to Veronica with what he thought was false info to get something started, but turned out to just be true. And then Veronica her and Katie did their masterful work with that correct, but not known that it was correct info. And so Amber's got it locked down. She knows Frank is talking to everyone. She knows that, yes, Veronica, is kind of, if we really drill in here, the one that was doing a lot of this, but I think Frank spoke to her first. So she's correct. And I just want to give my girl as much credit as I can here. And now the only other thing from the opening part is we see the gap between Devon and Shane, and where they are split amongst the two alliances of the house it's just a ever widening gap. We learn that Devon and Nany have been hanging out. That's the person they've each been hanging out the most with all season long, and they're super close. So that does give us a little more reason why, Devon was with that side of the house a little bit more. And then we get, Shane and Veronica always have been tight, always seemingly will until the end of the episode. But that he is very worried about Frank kind of taking his spot in Veronica's hierarchy here and within that alliance. And so we just see that gap widening. And of course, that will come into play much, much more throughout the episode and likely into next week as well. Then for the daily challenge, okay, this is a fantastic, fantastic daily challenge. This is a super creative puzzle. I love this. I love the clocks. You got to pick up on the LA clock is set at a different time. So each one you got to know, okay, set our LA clock, then add the whole thing. It's just great. It's a very creative puzzle. It's a very creative design you both get to look at this and put together one puzzle, but at first, you're going to be on opposite sides, and you have to look at the keys separately. And when one of you thinks you're good without being able to communicate with the other, one of you thinks you have it memorized, you burn it. You both have to go on to the next one. I love that little extra element of it. This is a way different game if one person could go through really fast and the other person could take their time and meet them at the board later. So it's just very, very creative. It's very good. I love it all around, and especially in a season where there is no last place goes into elimination. One thing that can do on the pro side of that decision in that part of the format is it can allow for something like this where, if this is a very different game and treated maybe not that differently by everyone ultimately in what happens here, but it should be treated differently if last place goes in, and last place was decided by, who got the least amount correct here. It changes things. And so in a season where there's no last place, this particular design works really, really well. And I really enjoyed it. The pre-daily confessionals moment of the episode nominee for sure. There's 3 of them back to back to back. Mel and Nicole, Adam and Steve, Frank and Sam, all 3 great. Adam and Steve are just hilarious every time. They get each other's kind of comedy that they're going for, and they work really well together, and it works for me. I don't know if it works for everyone, but it definitely works for me. I really enjoy it. All 3 of those confessionals, very, very good. And then in the actual contest itself, we get two pieces of strategy that ultimately decide the whole thing for all the teams. First is, this is really hard. I should say that just because I really like it and think it's a creative and fun puzzle. That doesn't mean it isn't really, really hard. It's a good amount of info to try to be memorizing and putting back together to then solve the math and whatnot at the end. But everyone is struggling with it. And a lot of people, have the issue of, my partner burned this really quickly, and it kind of turns into each team having the one partner that thinks they've memorized enough of it, kind of being the only one that thinks they remember anything. And we get the strategy from Dario that I do think is good, is sound strategy from him. And, it obviously doesn't ultimately lead to like a win or anything, but I do think it's like a decent strategy, and maybe would be a better strategy in the event last place goes in, which is, I don't think we're doing very good. We've run out of anything we actually remember. We are not confident in anything else. I don't think any more time is going to help us probably get anything else correct on this board. So I'm just going to yell check because I don't think it's going to get any better for us. And that way, hopefully, by me yelling check, I know other people are going to be very quick to follow of just like, shit, someone else is in. We got to go. We got to go. We got to go. And maybe it's just good editing to make Dario look like this actually worked. Maybe it did actually 100% work, probably somewhere in the middle, but they at least edited it to make it look like everyone immediately is like, shit, someone's done. We've got to go. Check, 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 check down the board. And I bet, that did help Dario and Ashley finish higher than they would have otherwise, potentially. But there are two teams that are smart enough to listen to the rules and to know, hey, one, there's no last place here, so there isn't any concern that we take the longest and then, still somehow end up at the bottom here. But they know the rule is the most correct. The most correct, and then the speed is just the tiebreaker if someone has tied with the most correct, and that is Veronica and Katie. And Shane and Devon, but I will give the credit to Shane, who seems to be the one who's like, no, we're getting this right. I think I can get this right. If you can just remember certain things, we can figure this out. Those three, the vets that they are, understand the rules and listen and are like, no, we take our time and we don't say check until we think we have gotten everything as close to correct, if not all the way correct, that we possibly can. They do that. They're the top two finishers, Veronica and Katie. I think TJ alludes to or flat out says they got it completely right, 100% right, which is very impressive. So kudos to them. Wonderful job. Way to understand the mission at hand, way to understand the rules, and way to have great memory skills. Memory skills are, can be a massive, massive thing, just to point out for a final. If there is the big memory puzzle can be something that adds or removes a ton of time in a final. So it is worth pointing out that is one area, like the memory seemed to be pretty on lock for those two. That could be a big, big advantage for them come final. Now for the big section of the episode. We're at the club. We're back at the house. We're at Stormy nominations. We're back at the house. Let's talk about all of it and how we end up with Fessel and Amber being the house vote in a 4-3 split decision there. First and foremost, when they're at the club, it does look like everyone's having a great time, and it does start to sink in a little bit every time we go to the club on this season, and really like on All Stars 4 and everything too, and even on Battle of the Eras. There's a part of me that's like they always show the montage of everyone seemingly having a really great time, and I imagine they were at least at this bar like a couple of hours. It wasn't like, hey, you're here for 30 minutes. We're gonna we got one thing we filmed that we'll put in an episode. All right, let's head back to the house. It looks like they're all having a great time. I think the difference is just now, every time that I beg, show us more of it, is that the cast is just much older, and most of them are in relationships, and there's just less stuff going on at the clubs. Like, it is just people in a much more friendly setting. Like, yeah, we all like had a drink and had like kind of danced around together and just like enjoyed that we were in Vietnam. And there wasn't, is that super interesting more than just a 40-second montage of it? Probably not. They're probably correct in that being what they show us. But the one thing they do show us outside of that little quick montage is Shane talking to Melissa, tried to combine names almost there, Melissa and Nicole. And I've got to ask the question, does Shane not look around and see how small the bar that they are in is, the section of the bar? Because the couple pan shots that they do back and forth, or when they're on one, you can see the other people in the background. This is not some massive establishment where they are off in their own total corner, not to be seen. And when you are speaking, and it's just one team, Melissa and Nicole, and one other person, Shane, just the three of you off in a corner, talking super animatedly, shaking hands, getting up and being like clearly very excited, the handshake, all of it. It's very obvious to everyone else. Like, everyone else sees that. They don't have to be like sitting there watching. Like, it's not like everyone else was like, okay, we just got to watch what Shane does tonight. But like, whatever couple of minutes that interaction conversation between those three takes, almost everyone else that is within like 30 feet of them at some point probably just notices, oh, those three are over there talking. Oh, looks like they're, I don't know, making a deal or something. They seem to be, very, very interested in what they're talking about. It's not just like friends chitting and chatting or whatever. And so that seems to be an error on his part, that like it's so obvious that that's what you over there talking about. They go back to the house and it was very obvious, and Veronica immediately is like, "Hey Nicole, let's hear what's up, because you're in our alliance because you and Adam are friends and me and Adam are friends, and that's fine, but you and I aren't necessarily friends, and I'm going to tell you exactly what you're going to do and exactly what you're not going to do, and you're going to do it. That's how this relationship is going to go." And that's exactly what Veronica does. Last week, we see her manipulating from the shadows. This week, she's like, "No, we're coming out from behind the curtain, and I'm going to tell you straight to your face, this is what you are going to do. You are going to prove you are loyal to me and to what I want to do. That's it. That's over. Now go talk to your partner and convince her of what I just told you you have to do. Or else it's you." And there is the threat of like, or else we'll just put you in and make it known you're on the bottom of this alliance. It is a 4-team alliance, so all 4 of us can go to a final together if you want. Being on the bottom is okay. You're still within the set of numbers that can work for all of us to do this all together, but you're at the bottom and you're expendable. Do what I say. And it's great. It's fantastic. And it's another great read from Veronica of this time. It's got to be me in your face, full aggression, not I'll talk to this person, have them talk to this person, not anything behind, none of that. No time. We're just doing it. We're upfront about it. Boom, game time. She convinces Nicole, who then convinces Melissa. Eventually, we see them go back and forth. We see them have the different conversations, but we then get the flashback during nominations once they actually make their vote that Melissa has been convinced, which ultimately is the smart move purely from can we win this game standpoint, is like Mel should know. Looking at my team, we're not doing so hot. We should if we're literally the one team that is in between the kind of quote unquote good teams over here and the quote unquote we suck alliance over here, we should be with the we suck alliance. We should be with the teams that aren't as quote unquote good or as big of threats. We fit in more there. Those are people we've got a shot against in the end. We shouldn't necessarily be with Nany and Turbo and Amber and Fessy and Ashley and Dario like that, or whoever else was even on that side at that point, Shane and Davon on that point. They're better than us at this, clearly. And this group might be too, but it's at least a little closer, or at least, a shot. So it is smarter for her, but I see where she's at, and I give her credit too, both as a way to also give Veronica another little extra bit of credit. But Melissa, similar to Amber, has at least got the read. Maybe it's after the fact, sure, but is understanding of what went down and why, and sees and says, I think it's in her confessional, or maybe it's in her direct conversation with Nicole later, but they got Big T and Corey out, and that was fine with them because it helped them bring the one team, their 4th team they needed. Me and Nicole had split allegiances because my best friend was in the house and Nicole was with them. And this getting rid of Big T brought me into much more Veronica's, pocket here by being like, you don't have this allegiance, shouldn't be split anymore. Your partner is clearly with us. So now your best friend's out. You have no argument. You should be clearly with us. So it's a good read by Melissa to understand that, and yet another little extra bit of why that move was really good and smart from Veronica and Katie's point of view. Then we get to the nominations themselves, and there is the big back and forth from Amber and Frank. It starts with a storm. I think that, because TJ just starts and says, let's just get right to it. And Amber's like, wait a minute, I would like to speak here and get in an argument, please and thank you. I'm guessing maybe that was it is storming and it might be about to storm all night and we don't want to postpone this till tomorrow or take it inside or whatever. We can film it, just do it fast. Screw it, no talk, just do the voting or whatever talk happens during the voting, do it. I think maybe that was at play. But Amber wants to speak. She calls out Frank. The one thing I think she does wrong is it's purely about Frank, which is correct. And by episode's end, Frank is, admitting, not that he even needs to in confessional, yeah, this is all right, true, but to their faces, I've got to act like this is completely blasphemous and they're completely making me out to be something I'm not, and I have nothing to do with this, which is the smart thing to do, and it's very entertaining. Thank you, Frank. The only thing I think Amber could have done a little bit better is brought Veronica and Katie into it. Veronica, at least, maybe leave Katie out of it. Don't, directly get both. You don't want both of those women yelling at you along. You don't want Frank, Veronica, and Katie, all three, engaged in yelling back at you. That's nightmare right there. But maybe roping in that Frank is the one, directing a lot of this. He's kind of using, like, if she could have got in there, what she, said she knew at the beginning. Like, Veronica did a lot of this, but I think Frank got Veronica or started Veronica on the path to then do all of this, or nudged her of like, this is going on. Good. Now you're going to do what you need to do with that info, which is your own masterful work. But I think if she could have roped in Veronica a little bit, maybe the whole house then is willing. But the problem is that I do think, Frank and Veronica have all the leverage here over Melissa and Nicole, the team they need to flip, the team that becomes the deciding vote here, because they need them to, they can just say, Melissa and Nicole, if you vote for Frank and Sam, like, Frank could just easily, if he would have needed to, he didn't even get to that point. If he needed to, they'll be like, if that's what happens, Veronica and Katie are putting in you versus us. That's what's happening. This can either be you vote for Fessel and Amber and we put Nany and Turbo against them and you're good, or you can vote us in and then you can come right in and play us and lose to us and go home. And so they've got all the leverage, but it's valiant effort from Amber. I love seeing her stand up and call the people out. And they go into elimination. And at that point, I wasn't super bummed. They still need a star, but eventually I would become rather bummed out. The only other thing to discuss, Frank, fantastic performer. We already covered that. Turbo and Shane, both. I got good giggles out of their giggling, out of Turbo's boredom, out of Shane's giggles that were probably misplaced, not realizing this isn't, you've done well to get yourself out of this, but you still kind of fell on the losing side of it, and you're going to be in a pretty shitty position after the fact, having now voted against your alliance that you do still kind of need to be a little bit a part of here. And so that will be much more to be discussed at the very end of this and a lot more next week. Then we go to the jungle, and my heart drops very quickly because, as you know, I am was now fully rooting for Fessel and Amber on this season. And the moment that it is, in fact, said that it will be Turbo and Nany, I was hoping against hope maybe it wouldn't be them, because when it is Turbo and Nany, I don't have any spoilers for the season still, but I did watch the trailer a couple of times, and the biggest moment maybe of the trailer is the moment of Nany yelling at Turbo, like standing up and going across the room and yelling at Turbo to shut the hell up or whatever. And I was like, what are the chances that they didn't show us that has happened and they didn't show us that? Pretty unlikely. So in my head, the moment it was Turbo and Nany, I was like, fuck, one thing I remember from the trailer is those two, and it hasn't happened, which means they're not going home, which means my favorites are. So my heart dropped, and I was bummed the whole time from the start of the elimination to the end of it, when my suspicion was proven correct that, yes, we have not seen that moment from Turbo and Nany. So apologies if you hadn't remembered that from the trailer and somehow next week they're in elimination and we haven't seen it still. My bad. I don't know how they do on the season. I don't know how anyone does on the season, but I knew that there was something to be seen from them still. So my faves were going home. And the game they play is kind of dumb, honestly. I don't love this elimination really at all. A bunch of questions. The first thing, though, when he says that it's called Scratch or whatever, it has Scratch in the title, I became horrified. My least favorite, maybe daily challenge of all time, is when they were all in the box, the big box suspended in air, and they had to scratch the paint to be able to see out, and they were only allowed to do it with their fingernails, and it was not good. It was not good. Bad idea by production. Horrifying. Gives me the chills just even thinking about it. And so I was like, do not make these people have to scratch this with their fingernails, please. They got a penny, so thank God they got pennies to scratch this off. But then my big question just became, do you have to scratch? There had to be a rule of how much they had to scratch. There had to be some clock of you have to at least scratch for this amount of time or reveal this much or something, because they didn't need to scratch at all. This puzzle, this picture that they have made of all of the cast in a pyramid with TJ at the top, you could put that together without looking at the answer key, okay? The top third of it has the Challenge All-Stars rivals in it. That makes that portion very easy. And it is still like this pyramid. Like you could do this, and I don't think this was like some perfectly symmetrical AI generated image that they had made of the cast doing this. I'm assuming they never made the cast do a human pyramid for promotional picture purposes. If they did, please put that picture out. That's fun. But so yeah, I had big questions on like, could you have just went and been like, we're gonna do the puzzle without the box essentially here? Like, we don't need the box, the picture, we'll figure it out. Because I think they could have and done it a lot faster without having to even do the scratching, but they clearly are supposed to do some scratching, if not a lot. And Turbo is incredibly fast at doing it. He and Nany absolutely crush it. They communicate well during it. They perform extremely well. And it seems, again, as always, editing can be deceiving, but it seems like they just do this incredibly fast. This isn't Amber and Fessy, screwed up or were really, really slow. This is two good teams, one of which performed great, went super fast, got it done, got the W, and the other team is now going home. So Turbo and Nany, we'll talk about with the power rankings later. Amber and Fessy, they go home. They go home as good friends and trusted allies in the game now, if they're ever in the game together again, which I love. Great to see. But, I'm super bummed out. They were my favorites coming in. I wanted them to do well. I thought they were the best team if they all ran a final together. And we won't get to find out if that's the case. And my guy Fessy will remain not a champion for another season. Then we've got our awards, and yes, I did just skip the very end of the episode, which might have been, the best part, one of the many best parts of the episode of Shane and Veronica going at it, Frank and Shane going at it a little bit. That is because that all is going to be covered next week. That story is continuing to build. It is fantastic stuff at the end of the episode, but I think we're going to get the continuation of that, literally of that scene and then of that storyline next week. So we will cover that in full there, but it was fantastic stuff. Excuse me, got the hiccups here. Hopefully they go away while we talk about quote moment and MVP. Best quote, another hiccup. Let's see. That maybe hopefully will be the last one. Best quote. We're only going to say the one because it's just such a clear and runaway winner, which regarding the very end of the episode to cover most of it here is that Veronica and Shane having the back and forth. Shane, saying essentially like no, or whatever he says at the end. What was even the part that he does? She says she'd never pick Frank over him. It was just the two of them. He says he doesn't believe her. And all the while, we're getting the long confessional back and forth with Frank with the quote of the week, which I don't have exactly correct here, but for the most part is, quote, "If anyone thinks that they have any control in this game other than me, they're wrong. I'm sorry. I've been in everybody's ear. It's all about moving the pieces on a game board. I'm trying to collect 200. I'm trying to pass go. Babe, you're looking at they." So we get the conclusion of the 2-episode Who Is They story arc. It's been Frank the whole time. We've known that as viewers the whole time. What a masterful confessional from... There's strong competition for the Dan Renzi Award this season, certainly, but Frank is fiercely in the fierce competition, is maybe in the front of it. He gets the quote of the week for definitely not the first time this season. Moment of the episode, the most nominees we've had from any episode. This episode was awesome. This has got to be the best episode of the season thus far. The pre-daily confessionals from Mel, Nicole, Adam, Steve, Frank, and Sam that we mentioned before. The Steve and Fessy back and forth confessional about analog clocks where Steve references Flavor Flav. That's really fun, really, really good. Veronica strong-arming Nicole, fantastic moment. Amber and Frank going at it at nominations is good. Turbo being bored at those nominations. I really like that little moment. Frank yelling and pacing after nominations, saying something to Shane. Shane says, go take it up with Devon or Veronica. And, he says, I think I'm about to get 2012 Frank, which, by the way, Shane, we're nowhere near 2012 Frank, okay? Like, Frank is keeping it composed, much composed compared to Frank of old. We will see if we get any true glimpse of Frank of old. And then Nany stopping Turbo from going off. Speaking of people of old, Turbo wants to do his Turbo thing after being voted into an elimination or sent into an elimination. And Nany smartly tries to stop him. Is just like, it's only going to make things worse. It won't help. It won't make you feel better, even if you think it will, and stops him, which me as a viewer, I'm like, look, you're going to get thrown in again, regardless. You're either going to win the daily or you're going to be asked to win the elimination. The rest of the season, that's what it's going to be. You're the top threat. You're the top team. Might as well let Turbo go yell at some people, flip some people off, call them pussy chickens. Like, might as well. Like, come on, Nany. It's a TV show. Let us see it. Let us see it, Nany. If this happens again, if you end up in another elimination, let Turbo yell at some people in broken English. It's fantastic every time. It's great. So let it happen. And then Shane and Veronica's argument at the end of the episode, and Frank, his confessional along with it. But we will give the award to Amber and Frank at nominations. Many, many great moments. All of these moments, fantastic. Just a awesome episode. MVP of the episode, Shane, Amber, and Veronica. Certainly all three get votes, but Frank is just undeniable. He's undeniable, okay? It's still early enough that he's got competition from Veronica probably for the season MVP right now. But like the idea that Frank, unless he's eliminated next week, and a big effort still from Veronica after that. I mean, Frank is he's not just the MVP of this episode, but he's clearly on his way to a strong finish in the season MVP award as well. Then finally, for our power rankings, our previously number 3 team, who had spent a lot of the season at number 1, Amber and Fessy, they are no longer. They are crossed off. We are down to 7 teams left. I'm guessing this is, I think this is a 12-episode season. I think I saw someone say that somewhere. So we've got a little bit left here. But if it is a 10-episode season, then maybe we've only got a couple eliminations left. We will see. I want them to take 5 teams to a final, but I'm guessing they're only taking 4, maybe even only 3. Who knows? But Steve and Adam, Nany and Turbo stay at the top, and they are in their own tier, in my opinion, of the 2 teams left that I think everyone else looks at rightfully in-house, and I look at as a viewer and saying, as a well-rounded team, as like just how they would grade out, doing all of the possible things that might be asked of you in a final, in a daily, in an elimination. These 2 teams grade out the best, clearly above everyone else. That isn't to bring the political side and the who are you going to get voted in or not side into it, but if you're just grading out how they're going to do in any elimination, daily or final, those 2 teams have to grade out the highest. They both have stars, and they both are in a good position to at least win the dailies to keep themselves safe. And so Steve and Adam, Nany, Turbo have to remain at the top. Frank and Sam bump up to 3rd. Ashley and Dario bump up 1 to 4th. Katie and Veronica bump up 1 to 5th. Devon and Shane 6th. Melissa and Nicole 7th. So this list does not change order at all from last week. It just removes what was our 3rd place team. And that's because I think, those 2 teams need to be at the top. I think Frank and Sam and Ashley and Dario they have the stars right now, and so they get that slight level up, and I do think have a slight level up when it comes to all the things you might be asked to do in a final. And I think Veronica and Katie have shown by far the most that they got to be above Devon and Shane and Melissa and Nicole. I still stand by what I've been saying for a couple weeks in a row now, that Melissa and Nicole is the only team that I truly just cannot see winning, that I think is like an actual 0% chance, regardless of who's there, regardless of what they're asked to do. I just don't see what strengths they each might have individually adding up to anything when they have to work together, and I just don't think they can work together. And yeah, so I think they're the only team with truly a 0% chance. I think Devon and Shane is a pretty low chance, but that's more so now because I don't know that they're going to get there as much as what they might be able to do in a final if they get there. And I think I got to have Veronica and Katie above them because I do anticipate this final being closer to an All-Stars 4 type of final than any of the other All-Stars finals. And I think Katie and Veronica can do really well at many sections of a final that it looks more like All-Stars 4 versus endurance-based something or other. And so, yeah, that's the breakdown. I think Nany and Turbo And Steven Adam, really, I have Steven Adam, and it doesn't really matter who I have in first. Obviously, none of this matters. None of this at all matters to what's actually already happened in this game. But I think Steven Adam are in just an amazing position, having a star and being, even though there's the two teams left in the quote unquote like highest threat level, Nany and Turbo are going to be the top team that this alliance is going after. And Steven Adam have a great shot at winning the dailies, or of being the, hey, let's get, Ashley, Dario, Frank, and Sam in there, and we'll get that star up for grabs and help you, Veronica, and Katie get it. I just love the position they are in. Prediction-wise, speaking of them, I keep predicting them to win more dailies, and they didn't do it this week. But I did last week predict the two teams in elimination correctly. So 1 for 2, or 2 for 3, whatever it is. 10 out of 17 now, something like that on the season. 10.5 out of 17, whatever it may be. I'm still above 500. I'm still doing decent. But I'm running out of like big, bold predictions to make. It's pretty much just got to be like, who do I think is going to win the daily? Who do I think is going to go into elimination or go home? And so for next week, we do see in the next week on that it is the, drive the car off the cliff thing they did in Battle of the Eras, or a remixed version of that. I think Steve and Adam win that. I think I'm going to predict them to win again. See if I get it right this time around. And I think Nany and Turbo are back in that elimination. And I think it's versus Ashley and Dario. I think this becomes a Veronica and Katie are like, we need a star, and we would like to be able to win that star at a daily challenge with not that many people left versus having to go into elimination and get it. So I think they are going to be able to manipulate and pull Nany, Turbo, Ashley, Dario, and have the full support of the other two star holders, Steve and Adam, Frank and Sam. And, they just have the numbers now, and no one's going to be able to do much about it. So that's what I see going down. I look forward to what has to be obvious fireworks between Shane and Frank and Veronica and that trio and everyone else in the house. And I just want this season to keep being as awesome as it has been. I thank you for being here, listening to the recaps each and every week, watching the recaps, however you are consuming these. It means the absolute world. Again, there won't be the new rankings, something or other episode tomorrow. That will come next week, though. If you have not gone back and check out Real World vs. Road Rules Fantasy Cast and why that should be the next All-Star season, please go do that. That would mean a lot. I promise you're going to enjoy it. I promise you're going to agree with me. If you don't, just in hearing that, agree that should be the next All-Star season. It should be. And love you. Appreciate you. I'll talk to you next week. Peace.